Welcome to Wargaming Recon. I am your host, Jonathan J. Reinhardt. Wargaming Recon is the only member of the TSR Podcast Network to discuss historical and New England gaming. This is episode 207, choosing what convention games to play. I want to welcome all of you new and longtime listeners to this episode of Wargaming Recon. Before we go any further, I want to let you know we will be covering a variety of things in this episode. We're going to talk about some tips that I use to help me pick what games to play at a convention. We're also going to be doing some brief reviews of some MDF terrain by Things from the Basement. We'll share some feedback, I believe, and some announcements and things of that sort. So I hope you'll stick with us for the whole episode. And since we're covering a lot of different things, it's probably a lot for you to keep track of. I know you like to listen while you're at the gym, you're commuting, you're at work, you're doing a variety of things. You're not going to remember everything. That's why we got the show notes, so you don't have to. You just remember this one thing, the show notes. You can get those at wargamingrecon.com/WR207. That's wargamingrecon.com/WR207. So as I said, it can be really hard picking out what games to play when you go to a convention. Now, I'm saying convention, but it could be maybe a trade show, could be a club day, could be any sort of participation event or a game day, or maybe even just picking what to play when you're either meeting some new gamers or you're trying to come up with something different to play with the people you normally game with. And all of that can be approached in many different ways, but I also know that it has a common thread for how you should pick what to play. And a lot of times you might think, oh, well, there's just so many different things. And what do I want to play? And how can I pick? It can be overwhelming for some of us, right? And we hope in this episode that you'll be able to use our tips here to kind of clear away some of that fog of war for you. Now, I don't know about you, but often when I go to any of these kind of events, or if I'm just trying to think of something different to play with my buddies, I might have come across maybe a new set of rules or a product by a company, and I might not be really familiar with that manufacturer. Or I might not be very familiar with this new set of rules. Maybe a friend's like, hey, do you want to play blah, 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 blah. Fire and Fury Regimental, for example. And I'll be like, I've never really heard of Fire and Fury Regimental. Could you tell me more about it? Now, if you go into Wargaming convention, you go into a club event, you go into a game day, you might not have the chance to ask that kind of question. And maybe even you don't have the chance to ask when you play with a friend. Maybe you're meeting up with a buddy, you're at the game store, you're at someone's house, you're at wherever you like to play your games. And they whip out this thing and they're like, hey, we should play this. They just kind of spur it on you right at the last minute. And you're like, and you're going to make that snap decision right then. Do you say yes? Do you say no? Do you want to be the jerk who says, no, I'm not going to play that. You brought all the stuff. Or are you going to say yeah and play and think, oh, what's going to happen? Okay. My first tip is try to go with something that you know. So whether you're going to a convention, say like Huzzah, right, historical gaming convention in Maine, it's coming up May 18th through the 20th, 2018. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in the episode. But let's say you're going to go to that and you're looking at that event listing. You want to pre-register. Find at least one game where either you know the game master running it, you know the set of rules, or you know the company that manufactures them, so that you have some sort of frame of reference to use, and you can have that to help you gauge your comfort level. Do they make the type of games that you normally like? If you're really a skirmish gamer, you're probably not going to want to play something that's really large scale, right? If you're someone who like a lot of detail, you're not going to want a very barren pretzel type of game. So if you're familiar with the company and it's one that you like, or if you like the way the GM runs games, you just really like this style. Like I like the way Mike Payne runs games, right? I think he's a fantastic GM. I'm going to sign up for something that he does. It might be something that I'm completely unfamiliar with otherwise. It's out of my wheelhouse. Maybe it's something that I'm a little uncomfortable with. It's not my normal style of play, not my preferred period. Maybe it's not even the scale I like to use. Maybe it doesn't tick off any box for me except the fact that Mike Payne is a GM, I'll sign up for it because I know I have that foundation that I can then launch from. So I have this one choice at least at any of these things where it's somewhat in my comfort level. Maybe completely, maybe partially, might be on the border, maybe it's kind of sitting there in the edge, like that peace village between North and South Korea. Maybe it is, just somewhere in the neutral zone, no man's land. Maybe it's firmly within my wheelhouse. Maybe it's just a toe over, right? Maybe just kind of slightly out there. It's enough within my comfort zone or yours so that you can be like, no matter what happens at this event, no matter what happens playing with your buddy or whatever, there's at least something that could give you a chance or hope of having a good time. Another thing I like to suggest is try something completely different, something so far outside your sphere of comfort that no matter what it is, you're going to have this new experience. Because when you go to a thing like a trade show where they have participation events, right? Think of it as a chance to try something you've never heard of. Maybe it's a brand new product. So if you happen to go to some recent, I don't know, trade show or industry conventions in the UK or actually elsewhere, really, you may have come across a new game called Gangs of Rome. Maybe you heard us talk about it on Wargaming Recon, but you haven't played it, and you're like, I don't know if it's for me. I don't like ancient Rome. I don't really do ancients. Play it because that'll be your new experience, and maybe, just maybe, this new, previously unknown, previously unfamiliar game could become your new favorite, right? I like to think that every favorite game that we have started off as something completely unfamiliar to us, something that maybe we didn't know, we weren't sure we were going to like, maybe something we got a first impulse and we said, oh, I'm not going to like that. But then something about it said, do you know what? You should try it. And you did. And you tried the game and you thought, my first impulse was wrong. I shouldn't judge that book by the cover, right? You dig a little deeper, you open it up, you go chapter by chapter into it and into it. You dive into those rules. You're like, whoa, this makes sense. And I like this. I like the way the author writes. I like the rules mechanics that they do here. I like how they handle combat or handle movement, or they have a really interesting command setup. I like the models that the company uses. I like the scenarios. I like it has something or many somethings that you like. Conventions are a great way to expose yourself to something new, something different, something you would never in a million years try otherwise, because any of these games, right, especially miniatures games, but any of these games are probably expensive. You have a lot of homework to do because you got to think, right? It's new. So, how much time, how much money, how much of other resources are you going to have to put into it? Will you be able to find anyone to play with it? Will it be worth it for the amount of time that you think you're going to play? What's the cost for all that? How much space is it going to take? And is it something that you can really see yourself doing long term? Or if not, maybe that doesn't matter. But does it fit any of your other needs that you have? And chances are, you're not going to give a new game a try. You're not going to put the money out to buy it, to own it, to build it up yourself, unless you think you're going to get a significant return on investment. And by that, I mean, maybe your return on investment is you don't mind laying out a lot of money for a ton of minis for a new set of rules or a new game if you know your buddies are going to play with it a lot. Or maybe you don't mind putting out $100 for a new board game because you know it's going to be complete and maybe it has some great solo play. You don't get to play with others a lot, but you have a lot of time that you can dedicate to playing yourself. Or maybe you just really like the terrain that comes with it because you want to build terrain for it. So you're not going to play a whole lot, but it's worth it because you're going to actually just get into the terrain making aspect and design of them, the assembly, the painting. It's something that you do. Or maybe it's worth it for you because you do a podcast, you do a video series, you do a web show, you do something where you're bouncing from game to game to game to game, and you need this next new thing to do. But if it doesn't fit any of those things, right? Are you really going to put all the money out for it? Games are expensive. Everything's expensive nowadays, whether it's food or gas. If you have kids, anything related to children is expensive. Family members, houses, whatever your conditions and things that you have, it all adds up, right? And usually our income doesn't go up as much, right? You might get a cost of living expense increase rather, and if you're lucky, maybe that's 1% or 2% or 3%. The cost of living actually goes up a lot more than that. And so your disposable income gets smaller and smaller and smaller, which means you have less money, of course, to spend for all sorts of things, including your gaming. So why take a chance on something new and unfamiliar when you can just keep on funneling it into the next Fantasy Flight game Star Wars product that comes out, or to a GW product, or to a Battlefront product, or to a World of Games product? You might not try a new company or something different. That's where a convention comes in. That's where a trade show comes in. A game day comes in. That's where a participation event comes in. That's where your buddy who has this new product and says, "Hey, I picked up this new game I heard about online. We should give it a try." That's where all that comes in. And if you say yes, like I said, you could have found your new favorite game that it then becomes worthwhile for you to spend your time, your money, your effort, your skills, your experience, all that kind of stuff into. So as weird as it sounds, I think you should pick a game that you're familiar with, either the game, the GM, or the company that makes it, the manufacturer, and you should pick something that is completely different than anything that you would normally play or get into. I also think that you should pick a game where you're going to play with people that you know. So, for example, let's say you're going to, I'm going to say convention again, you're going to Huzzah with some buddies and you're all going to sign up for this tournament. You know that there's going to be this bolt action tourney happening there. So you all happen to have armies or whatever, and you're all signing up for the tournament. So you sign up for it because you're going to get to play with your buddies. No matter what it is, you're going to get to play with friends. And maybe you'll play with some new people, which is kind of nice. You go outside your zone of comfort, again, your sphere of control, your sphere of influence. But you get to play with friends. Or maybe there's going to be this big mega battle that's going to be happening, right? And everyone's bringing forces to it. So you each contribute a tiny portion of it, and you're playing with 4 or 5 of your friends. So it's going to be fun. It's just like you with your buddies, right? And you might be thinking, well, I can do that anywhere, right? I can do it at home. I can do it when I'm at the club. I can do it when I'm at the local game store. And you could, right? But this is a different location. And just because you could doesn't mean you do. Now, I don't know about you, but there's a vibrant community near me of gamers. And I'm friends with a good number of them. But I don't get to game that often. I don't get to get out that often. I have a wife, I have a daughter, I work full time. I do the podcast, right? You'd think with someone who's doing a wargaming podcast would get out to war game, right? I hate to tell you, it's not true. I don't get out that often. I really don't. And so while I could play some big mega battle with a bunch of my buddies here, the truth is I don't get to unless I'm at a convention, unless I'm at a game day or a trade show or any of that kind of stuff. Because we're all planning to go to this. This is a big event for us. So we make a point of going. And so we want to play together, right? We want to play a game, whether it's new, maybe it's something familiar to us. It doesn't matter. We want to play together, something, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a private event. We want to play with other people too, but we want to play together because we want to smoke our friends, right? We want to be like, whoa, we got you good. Or we want to be on the same team. We want to work together to lift each other up and then get victory, to have fun, to have that good game, to have a great experience, to have those memories, to bring forth and mention next time, or to mention when we're at the pub or the after things that we're doing. And we can be like, hey, what was I called on turn 5 when such and such happened? And your guys came up and the cavalry came and they totally charged you up the butt. That's what you want to do. You want to have those conversations after, because, at least for me anyway, gaming isn't just about the game. It's about the people with whom you game. And for me, that is far more important than what I play. And I know that's not true for everyone, and it doesn't have to be, because that's one of the wonderful things about gaming. There are many, many, many different facets to the die that is gaming. It is the infinity, right? Because there's so many aspects to it. And each aspect, or many of them, any composition of them, can make each of us happy. We each have something that we love, but then there are other things that bring us joy too. So I like casual games, but I like playing with my buddies. I like war games. I like board games, right? These are all different things, and they can combine together into like transform like a Constructicon into Devastator or something for you 80s kids out there who are listening. But they can also be disparate, right? So they don't fit just right. Maybe there's a whole lot of moves to get all the colors to appear on the same side of that Rubik's cube for it to all line up, and that's okay, right? So my first tip: pick something that you're familiar with. Second one is pick something that you're not familiar with, something completely different. And the third tip: play with your buddies. Now, yes, fourth tip, play with people you don't know. And you could do this, you can combine these, right? So you could play a game that you're familiar with some of your buddies, but also with people who you don't know. That's okay. You do not have to play with all your buddies. You don't have to play with all people you don't know. But your friends are really just people who you didn't know before, right? So why not play with someone who could potentially be a new gaming friend? Give it a try. Who knows? Convention, it's a chance where it's no strings attached, right? It's kind of like very casual dating, blind dates, right? Where instead of dating for a romantic relationship, you're dating, as it were, in a sense, for gaming friends. Even if they're people you only game with at these conventions, these trade shows, these participation events, club days, or whatever, that's okay. Use it as a chance to feel things out and see how it goes. Another thing that I highly recommend is check out any area. There's probably a designated space actually where it is. Usually near the vendors is my guess, depending on the convention and how they have it set up. But there's usually a space where demo games are happening. And maybe it's an established game. Maybe there's like the new Age of Sigmar or whatever, and they have people from GW doing it. But maybe it's an up and coming game. Maybe it's a game that's going to be put on Kickstarter. Maybe it's the next zombie side where the people who are creating it have a table and they just want to do 5-10 minutes to run you through how it goes. Go there, check it out, give it a try. Now, that doesn't mean you have to buy the game. That doesn't mean you have to support it on the crowdfunding platform. That doesn't mean you have to join their mailing list. You don't have to do any of that stuff if you don't want to. But try it because these people really could use the feedback and it doesn't cost you a whole lot. It costs you what, 10 minutes of time, 20 minutes of time, maybe? You can do that while you're waiting for your next planned game to happen, your next event to happen. You can do it while you're waiting for a dinner. Maybe you're like, okay, let's go to dinner. And they're like, it's a 45-minute wait, guys, because everyone's going to the restaurant in the hotel here. So you go back, you get 20 minutes, you play the demo game. See what you like. Maybe you can have a good time, even if you only got 20 minutes of fun. Like 20 minutes you didn't spend waiting in line for the restaurant or just kind of hanging out and wondering what's going to go on until your next planned scheduled event that you registered or pre-registered for. But maybe you get a really good time. Maybe you give some invaluable feedback to the game designer or designers. Maybe there's more than one. And maybe your feedback helps make the game into something far greater than what it could have been. You'll never know unless you try it. I'm sure the game designers will appreciate it. And I bet you will too. So give it a try. Check on those demo games. I have to admit, I am usually guilty of being like, oh, look, there's demo games, and whoop, 180, and I ignore them. Partially because I feel like, oh, if I go over there, it's a sales pitch, right? They want me to play the game, of course, right? They want me to demo it and get some experience. What they really want is they want me to buy into it. So I feel like, oh, if I go to it, that I need to give them money, I need to sign up for a mailing list. They for be like, okay, just send me all sorts of emails, which I'll then forget about. I feel like there's some like I got to give something, I got to do some sort of buy-in, and that's not really always true. And a lot of that's just me in my head thinking like, oh, this is what I got to do, and that's not honestly the case, right? For some of them, it is. You can kind of get the feeling like if someone's just like, oh, I need more people, so I can be like, I spoke to 500 people today, and then I hit my check mark for thing that I did, and you can tell what people truly care, right? Who are really invested not only in their game but in the hobby as a whole. Those are the ones that I really like, and more people are doing this, and more people are truly invested in the hobby. So I highly recommend it. Now, I also think that when you go to a convention, you shouldn't overschedule yourself. So, yes, I'm talking in this episode about how to pick the games you're going to play, the events you're going to go to, whether they're panels or whatever. But leave some holes in there, right? Beside the fact that you need to eat. So you should have at least 2, if not 3 meals a day. You should have your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner. You make sure you get plenty of sleep. You got to make sure that you take care of personal hygiene, whether that's going to the bathroom, whether that's taking showers, brushing your teeth, all that kind of stuff, taking any medication you're supposed to take. But also, it's nice to have some downtime so that you can check out the vendors, so that you can just kind of wander around, maybe see people who you know, or people who are like your convention friends. You may not have had games with them, but you can go and you can say hi, or they can see you and say hi. Gives you a chance to do that demo game. It also gives you a chance to just kind of relax a little bit because you don't want to always be on the go. Always have that on switch on, be like, I got a game, I got a game, I got a game. And I think a lot of people, especially for the larger conventions, like you go to a Gen Con, right? You go to a PAX and you go to these things and they're super, super expensive. Hundreds of dollars, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars just to get into the convention. Never mind the cost of transportation, never mind the cost of accommodations if you're staying there, never mind the cost of food. So you think, oh, I'm spending all this money. I got to maximize my return on investment. I got to maximize my fun. I got to maximize everything I do so that no millisecond of time is wasted. Poppycock. Poppycock, I say. Not only is that unhealthy, not only is that unrealistic, but you will leave yourself unfulfilled and you will actually be unhappier than if you give yourself some breathing room so that you can just go and let it out. Trust me on this. Just trust me. You got to do it, people. So, yes, you could book yourself into a morning and afternoon and an evening game. You can book yourself for every single moment and then book yourself for pickup games during meal times. You could book yourself into 5, 6 in the morning to keep on doing games and other stuff with people and hanging on the halls, hoping for pickup games and doing demos and stuff nonstop. You could schedule yourself crazy for that. Please do not do it. You will thank me for it. The people at the convention will thank you for it and thank me for it too. The organizers will be thankful for it. Everybody will be thankful for it. You'll be happier, you'll be healthier, you'll have a more enjoyable time playing in the games and participating in the events that you do sign up for. If you leave a slot or two empty, it's okay. You're not going to miss out. And even if it turns out that there's something really cool that happened that you could have signed up for and you didn't, you'll be playing in plenty of other really cool things. And there's always next year. There's always next convention, next game day, next club event, next participation event, next time you're gaming with your buddy. There's more time. There's more time. You don't have to do it. So those are some of my tips for what games and events that you should pick. So I think you should pick something that you're familiar with. You should pick something that you're not familiar with. You should play with friends. You should play with people who are not yet your friends, soon to be friends, whatever you want to call it. And you should make sure that you give yourself some breathing room. So those are my 5 tips. You can get them in the show notes, wargamingrecon.com/WR207. Now, before we come back to something I said earlier this episode, which was, yes, huzzah. Before we come back to that, we're going to migrate away just slightly for a moment so that we can talk about some other things that I want to cover. And those happen to be a brief review of a couple products by Things from the Basement. They make MDF terrain. And if you're not familiar, MDF is a type of wood, right? And usually when you get MDF terrain, you get pieces that almost look like, I mean, it's better than balsa wood, but it has that light kind of feel of it. And it's very dense wood. It's probably going to smell smoky. And the reason being is because it is. When the pieces are cut into the wood, they cut with a laser usually, right? So that's how they get all the really cool designs in them. That's how they get all of the outline so that it actually cuts the design away from the rest of the wood. And they leave, just a smidge left so that it's actually connected. So think of it like getting a plastic multi-part model on a sprue. The sprue in this case is a big chunk of wood, and by big, it depends on the surface area, but it's not like terribly thick. And when you cut the plastic arm or the head or whatever's on the sprue, it has a little tiny bit of plastic. And usually comes down to like a triangular point almost. Instead of that, it's a little bit that's connected to the exterior, again by wood, because the whole thing's by wood. And instead of it being put in a mold and then kind of spun around a centrifuge sort of thing, this is how plastic models, actually metal models too, how they tend to be made. And the stuff flows into all the crevices, whatever. These MDF pieces, they cut by laser away from it. And the beauty of this is that unlike traditional terrain that you might get, where let's say you're buying a house, right? That might be either all completely assembled, which is great because then you don't have to put it together. It's just easier. Maybe it's already painted, which is good because again, you don't have to paint it. Saves you time. Maybe it costs a little extra, but that's okay. But they're bulkier. So if you buy them at a convention, you got to find a way to pack it and bring it back. So it's going to be something that takes up more space. If you're flying, you're taking a train or whatever, even if you're drying, then you got to find room. You got to spend some money to ship it. Or if you're ordering it online or you're ordering from a vendor via mail order or anything like that, postage is going to cost a little bit more because it's going to be in need of a larger container. These things, they're thin, right? I didn't measure this particular one. I'm looking at, it's called Two Columns. It's inspired by Frostgrave's Ghost Archipelago. Frostgrave, of course, is by Osprey, publisher Osprey Games. This is pretty thin. I'm going to say less than an inch or two in thickness for the whole kit for 2 columns here, which are gorgeous. The laser allows really intricate and detailed design. You can go almost any scale. You can do things small like this. You can do things large like a building. In fact, Sarissa Precision has been making all the Gangs of Rome terrain this way. Things from the Basement makes a ton of terrain. It's very, very popular. And this kit costs, what is it? $6.50 American. This is intended for 20 millimeter figures. It's actually technically HDF, laser cut 3 millimeter HDF. And as it says, it's supplied unpainted and unassembled. So what I did with this, I actually spent some time earlier today looking at it, and I have no experience using MDF or HDF terrain. And by using it, I mean like assembling or painting it. So I was like, well, how easy is it to do? Because you read things about how hard it is to paint and how difficult it is to assemble. And a lot of that truly depends on the kit that you get. So this right here, actually, in the little packet that you get, it says detailed instructions are available for download at thingsfromthebasement.com. And if you go there, there's a download section. You click on that, and there's a long list. So you just scroll down the list, or you can use what is it, Control F or Command F on your computer, which is the find feature, and then just type in the name of your kit, bring you right down. You click on a link for the PDF, and it'll open up in your web browser most likely, or download it to your computer. And it gives you the instructions on how to assemble it and what to do. You'll find a lot of tips online, whether you go to a blog or you go on YouTube. The Terrain Tutor, I know, is very popular on YouTube. It's done a lot of this kind of MDF, HDF sort of stuff and gives tips on things. And Things from the Basement gives tips on what to do. For example, because it's laser cut, that means the wood got burnt, right? There's going to be some sort of residue on it. Before you break things apart, you should get a damp cloth or paper towel or something like that. And just kind of rub it across. This is the sound of me rubbing my hands across the kit. Pretend that I was doing that with the paper towel. Just damp, not wet, not sopping, just slightly damp, and just rub it across. And you'd see that you get some of that discoloration off. And you can actually just tell by looking at the kit where some of that extra burning is, that smoky residue. Just wipe that off, because otherwise that'll cause your paint job to be a little patchy, because it'll be darker, of course, than the rest of the stuff. It's not going to harm the wood. It's not going to harm your design or anything. You do it. And the reason why you want to do it before you take it off the sprue, and by sprue I mean the piece of wood, is you might have really small, intricate, detailed pieces. And if you take those out of it, you punch them out, and then you do this, you could break them. this stuff can be very fragile. And now this kit is not, because this is basically solid pieces here for it. The two columns are literally just pieces that compose four sides of a column done twice, along with some base plates that they slide into, and then top and bottom of the plinths to kind of cap it off and give a more solid base. And that's it. There's not a whole lot of things that come out of it or anything like that. Whereas if you do in a house, you might have like an inner frame, you might have an outer frame, windows, you might have a lot of empty space, a lot of void in there. And that can cause your things to be very, very tiny and fragile, and you don't want to break that. So just do the wiping beforehand and you're golden. The instructions for this kit, the two columns, wonderful, really easy to follow. You go down and it recommends, and I'm going to say that I need to emphasize how imperative it is to assemble the four sides of the column first. You should dry fit everything. So punch them out, make sure they fit together, and then move on. And the reason why I'm saying you should dry fit is, first of all, if it doesn't fit right, you're going to be in for a world of hurt. But also because this fits together in an interlocking method. So with this piece right here, this column, which I found you could just punch out by hand without breaking it. Some more fiddly things you cannot do that with. So just be mindful. But this interlocks, which is great because it adds structural strength to it, a little extra foundation to that kind of thing. And that is wonderful because you want it to be as strong as possible. You're going to be playing with it. You're going to be bringing it places, probably throw it around. Not intentionally trying to damage it, but you're going to damage it maybe. So you want it to be as strong as you can get it. So having it interlocking is a good thing. Trust me on that. But it makes it a little fiddly to put together. And you probably heard that snap, and I'm trying to just piece it together so I can show in the video that we have, because we record these things live on YouTube Live, formerly known as Google Hangouts on Air. And for the video to get, and I don't think I'm going to get it, it's because it's fiddly. But what I will say is dry fit it and then use some white glue. The gluing should be pretty easy. And you're going to want to make sure that you use, I don't know, like rubber bands, magnets or something like that for this kit, just for these four sides until the glue dries and everything's set in the interlocking method. And oh, did we do it? Aha! Victory is mine! Ha ha! So I'm holding it up for the camera. So if you watch the video, you'll see. And we got it held together in its interlocking way. Now, if you get the capstones on, you're golden because it'll be very, very secure. And it'll be A-okay. Now, as I said, the online instructions for this recommend that you assemble the column first and then put it into the base and all that. Now, my one complaint with this is when it comes to the capstone and the base for the column itself. So you have the column, it's four sides, you put it together. You have sort of like a base plate sort of thing where it has some holes where they notch. It's a tongue and groove kind of look for assembly for any of you who do woodworking. And they go in, but that's going to leave an unfinished top and unfinished bottom. So there's a flat piece, a bigger one for the bottom to give a nice foundation, and a small one for the top. You're going to want to center those so that it looks really nice. And that could be a little tricky to do. So you could create a jig, I suppose, to properly align it. Otherwise, just kind of eyeball it, see what you do. You might get it not quite right, and that's okay if it's slightly off because it's going to add some character to it. This kit here, I mean, it's intended for Ghost Archipelago, but really when you look at the design, it would be great for any sort of pulp stuff. It'd be great for, oh geez, I can't believe I'm promoting them by Games Workshop, for Lizardmen or anything in the New World over there. It'd be great for Aztecs, so you could do ancient forts and that kind of stuff. You could use it for any sort of jungle area. You could use it sci-fi. You could use it fantasy. You could use it World War II, World War One, whatever. Could be great for Indonesia, and you could use it in South Pacific, anywhere over there as some sort of totem or whatever. Those things are probably gonna have had some damage in time, right? The longer that they've been around, they probably were handmade. So if yours is a little off, that's okay. Um, the great things about it, the kit's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. The design's great. Everything is extremely legible. I think it'll take painting really well, and the detail on it will help to come forth with some dry brushing. So if you're gonna paint it, I think by and large, almost everyone says, and I haven't painted this one yet, but I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say this is what you should do. Do a spray on base coat, probably a black would be nice, and then a spray highlight, maybe like a gray, something like that, depending on what kind of color stonework that you want it to look like. I presume you want it to look like stone. And then you do a quick dry brush. Use like a foam brush applicator because I think you'll actually get a better look with that. Now you could use craft paints, you could use model paints for that, but whatever you use should be okay. And then if you wanted to go crazy, you could do like a wash. And I would recommend sealing it. I love Tester's Dull Coat, Dulcote. If you're not familiar, do I don't know 1 or 2 coats of that, depending on what you're going to do with it. If you're intended to make the convention circuit, do like 3, maybe 4 coats. It's okay. Now, another kit that I'm looking at this time are from their line of accessories, from things from the basement. It's called Freight Pallets. These are detailed freight pallets, and for 28mm figures, it's laser cut 1.6mm and 3mm HDF. Contains 8 freight pallets, again, unassembled, unpainted, with instructions from thingsfromthebasement.com. It's another laser cut kit. All this stuff laser cut. Talked about that, so I'm not going to dig into it again. This is another easy one to dry fit with some really nice pieces here. It's very, very simple, and in some ways it's modular. So it comes with what they refer to as like crossbar kind of pieces that go in the middle between the base, which is pretty well unadorned, and the top. I mean, you're familiar with what a wooden pallet looks like. But no matter what size of pallet you're using, whether it's a medium one, or a big one, these crossbeam kind of pieces fit them all. So it's same distance across, but they're just longer. So I like that. So that way it helps to keep the cost down. And if you happen to lose 1 or 2, you can just do it for whatever size you think it'll be best. Again, I think gluing is going to be easy. This one, you're going to build it top to bottom. So it's really, each pallet is a base piece. It's a 3 cross beams, and then a top piece, some PVA glue, rubber bands, or you could magnet. Put just magnets on opposite sides and see if that holds. That might be enough if you don't want to do clamps or anything like that. And some PVA will ease out as it will with the 2-column one. Just take a damp paintbrush, just damp, and just kind of go along the edge so that way you're helping to redistribute it, and you get any excess PVA glue, and then it'll dry. It'd be great. This is one you could paint on the sprue. Some people recommend painting these on the sprue. I think the column might be better painted on the sprue, but the freight pallets, I don't think you necessarily need to, just because of how they're done. But you can paint them on the sprue first, and then do all this kind of stuff. Popping these out was easy by hand. There are some smaller components. So in their instructions, they say you should get a really sharp modeling knife and cut away from yourself, of course, if you do. Get a cutting mat, one of the self-healing ones. I have, I think it's an Arvin one, and do it on that. But I tell you, I had a harder time using the modeling knife to cut the crossbeams out than just pushing with my finger. And I have small fingers. I have small hands, right? But I could push them out, and it was easy to do that. I didn't damage the piece or whatever. Now, some really tiny pieces that, again, would be fragile, as I mentioned earlier about these things, you want to take more care. But this, you just pop it out. It'll be okay. The pallets, right? So there's not a whole lot you can do to accentuate a pallet. It's not like you can be like all fancy with a pallet. That's not what they're for. They're wooden pallets. They're an accessory. Either going to use it to spruce up some terrain features you're doing. You're going to use it for skirmish games for cover, or you're going to do. You could do all sorts of things with them. These look like palettes. That's all they need to do. So they look good. You can tell what they're going to be. They're not fancy, but they don't need to be fancy. You get a good number of them actually in here. You, 8 when you're done. So I don't want to call them unremarkable because again, they're palettes. That's what they're supposed to look like. That's what they're supposed to do. One thing I really like about them is with the design for them and the construction, they're very sturdy. So you can put models on, you can put large scale heavy metal models on them. You could put all sorts of other stuff on them. They're not going to break. They're not going to have issues with that. So they're going to hold the weight of other gaming things that you put on them. You might notice when you try to assemble that some of the interior pieces haven't fallen away. So, like a pallet, right, is basically slats of wood on the top anyway, with gaps in the middle. So to get that, they gotta like laser cut each of those things that are gonna be a gap, plus laser cut the whole piece. So those little interior pieces that should be empty, they may not have fallen out. That's the case, just kind of pop them away. You'll be okay. You're not gonna harm your kit. You're gonna do a good thing. It's gonna look good. You'll be a-okay. So as I said, these are just 2 of the kits that we will be reviewing here on the show, and we're going to do more work with these particular ones at a later point. But for this episode, we talked about 2 columns inspired by Frostgrave's Ghost Archipelago and freight pallets from the accessories line, both from Things from the Basement. I want to give a big thank you to Things from the Basement for supplying these review products for us for the show. So be sure to check out thingsfromthebasement.com. We'll have a link in the show notes at wargamingrecon.com/WR207. Okay. So now that we've done that, I have a few announcements that I want to share with all of you. First of all, I want to thank all of our Patreon members, our Wargaming Recon Army members, for being backers. I want to remind everyone that our new reward levels are active on Patreon. Go to wargamingrecon.com/Patreon. And I want to say that coming up will be the Huzzah Wargaming Convention, Historical Wargaming in Portland, Maine. It happens May 18th through the 20th. I will be there. I believe Adrian will be there. We will be doing a live recording there on Sunday, May 20th. If you're at the con, you can attend the live recording. We'll have more details as we get closer to it. I believe, if I am correct, that I already know what room we're going to be in. And I think I think it's 10 o'clock on that Sunday morning where we're going to be. But I believe it is called the Whale Back Room. We'll confirm this on our social media as we get closer to the convention and when the convention is actually live. It's a room at the end of the hallway, kind of away from everything. So like when you come into the gaming aspect of the DoubleTree in Portland, if you come into that convention entrance, you can go straight into the main convention gaming space. You can take a right that heads you towards the pool and the exercise room and the registration desk and the restaurant, or you can take a left towards the elevators. And if you keep on going, walking past to the left, past the elevators, there's a bunch of rooms on the left and there's rooms further back. So we're going to be out of the way. That way we'll have some nice, quiet space away from all the gaming so that the recording will be very legible for your listening pleasure. But also so that if you want to come in person, you can come and watch us. It'll be nice. People get a chance to pop in and out and see us. We're hoping to also have some time to play games with you guys and gals. So we've signed up for events, Adrian and I, all sorts of them. I don't have the list in front of me at the moment, but it should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. I believe he is as well. And Huzzah is just a lot of fun. It's something that I love to attend, and I'm very grateful for their support and their sponsorship of the show and their kindness and generosity and friendship. They are truly an amazing convention. I love going to it. They're not gigantic, but they're not tiny either. They managed to check off just about all of my boxes, what I'm looking for in a gaming experience, whether it's a convention, whether it's a trade show, whether it's just gaming with friends. It's what I'm looking for. And I think it's probably what many of you are looking for as well. So I hope to see some of you there. I want to remind all of you that the next episode of Wargaming Recon comes out on May 21st, which is the day after Huzzah. No, I don't know what we're talking about in that. No, it's not the Huzzah episode. And No, I don't know when we're recording it. I don't know a whole lot about it. What I do know is you can go to the episode guide to find out more about upcoming episodes of Wargaming Recon. And you can do that either by going directly to the episode guide. So you might already have the web address, but I would suggest you just go to the show notes, wargamingrecon.com/WR207, and that'll direct you right to all the show notes here, and you can click a link that'll bring you to the episode guide so you can see all the other stuff that we have coming up. So, for example, that May 21st episode, don't have anything planned, but that's okay. Episode 209, which comes out at the beginning of June, it will be the Huzzah 2018 live show with Adrian Benson. And then the other show in June, at middle of June, episode 210, will be when Stefan Pokorny and Nate Taylor from Dwarven Forge come on to talk about Kickstarter 6, which is a big Kickstarter for 2018 for Dwarven Forge. Great, great terrain. And also doing a smaller Kickstarter just for models and pieces, which should be a lot of fun. Well, anyway, I want to thank all of you for listening to this episode of Wargaming Recon. I want to say that I really appreciate you sticking with us. And I know what you're thinking. If you've listened to the whole thing by now, and if you listened to the previous episode, you know that we talked about our survey results. And one of the things that we talked about in that was that, in general, convention episodes are things that you don't like to listen to. So you're probably thinking, if I said all that in this previous episode, right, the one right before this one, and I'm spending this episode talking about what to pick to play at a convention. What am I doing, right? I'm picking things for topics that generally you guys don't want to hear. Well, I think this subject actually expands. So, as I said at the start of the show, I think it applies to conventions. I think it applies to game days. I think it applies to trade show. I think it applies to participation events. And I think it applies to just when you're playing games with your friends, right? If you're not sure what to play with your buddies, bring something new, bring something they're not familiar with, bring a game that they are familiar with, bring something that allows you to play just with your friends. Maybe it's just a 2-player game if it's just you and your buddy. Bring something that's like a 5 or 6-player game so that maybe other people at the store or wherever you're playing, they can join in, people who you don't yet know. You might find someone who you really want to game with. You just don't know. So I think it has that broad appeal, but also because we are going to be at Huzzah coming up soon. Actually, by the time you listen to this, we will be thinking more and more about being there. And by the time you listen to the next episode, we will have already been there. It just made sense to kind of talk a little bit about it. So again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for all your support. And no matter what, you know that no matter how busy you are, no matter what's going on in your life, you know that you need to, you have to keep on gaming.